Hey, it's Andrew back here at BTO Range in Conroe, Texas. Rocking the green shirt today instead of the black shirt. Maybe it'll be a little easier to see the guns in front of me here on the table. But what we have here today, we have a couple of Colt revolvers from the turn of the 20th century. We have a Colt New Police revolver and a Colt Police Positive Special revolver. So they're related in a sense, but they're 20 years apart. This Colt New Police manufacture date on this gun is 1900, and the Colt Police Positive Special here, that's a 1920 gun. And we're going to talk about them individually, and it's a good representation of some of the design changes that occurred with Colt throughout this period of time. So the Colt New Police, this guy here, was one of the first swing-out cylinder revolvers that Colt made. They'd had double-action revolvers in line before, but this was really one of the first swing-out cylinder guns they made. It was a 32 caliber gun, and that leads to confusion with some of the calibers about what they are and what interchanges with them and what not and what doesn't. But the model, the Colt New Police model, was introduced in 1896, the same year that the 32 Smith & Wesson long cartridge was introduced. The 32 Smith & Wesson had existed prior to, and then they lengthened that cartridge, made the 32 S&W long. And Colt introduced this revolver in the same year, 1896, and they chambered it basically in 32 S&W long, but as the story goes, they weren't going to engrave anything about Smith & Wesson on a Colt revolver. So what they did is change the bullet profile of that cartridge from the round nose of the Smith & Wesson cartridge, made a flat point, and called it the 32 Colt New Police. So that was a new cartridge that introduced in this revolver. Dimensionally, except for the bullet profile, dimensionally the same and interchanges with the 32 Smith & Wesson long. There was also another chambering in this gun, the 32 Long Colt, and by extension, the 32, it was never really called the 32 Short Colt officially. It was an adaptation of a British Webley round, the 320 revolver round. But it was, I guess, called 32 Short Colt over here in the States. And Colt had chambered revolvers for that in the New Line series and things of that nature prior to the swing-out gun. So, and that's where the confusion comes in. 32 Long Colt and 32 Colt New Police, not the same cartridge. The 32 Colt is an outside lubricated bullet similar to a 22 long rifle. If you put the cartridge up next to a 22 long rifle, it just looks like a bigger version of the long rifle. And the 32 Colt Police is inside lubricated, so the bullet diameters, case diameters are different. The 32 Colt New Police will not fit into a 32 Colt chamber. And if you were able to you can get the 32 Colt chamber to stay in a 32 Colt New Police, and you probably can. When you fire it, you stand a good chance of splitting the case, so that the cartridges do not interchange. To complicate the issue, on the side of the barrel of this gun, it just says 32. So you have to pretty much, and the way we check, quite frankly, is I was able to put a 32 Smith & Wesson long cartridge into a chamber of the cylinder, so we're relatively certain that's a 32 Colt New Police, which majority are. Gun was never chambered in 38. So when this gun was introduced and the cartridge to go along with it, one of the big customers and the big buyers of this gun was the City of New York Police Department. The commissioner at that time was Theodore Roosevelt. And he was a big proponent of arming. He bought like 4,500 of these to arm his police officers there in New York. And those guns are distinguished by the New York Police Department roll marking on the back strap. This one does not have this. This is one of the, they made almost 50,000 of these guns, so this is one of the ones that wasn't New York Police, but you will find them with other police markings on them. And that if it appears to be factory and not some kind of spurious or faked up marking, can add to the value of the gun. So the Colt New Police 32, it was introduced with either 2.5, 4-inch or 6-inch barrels. This is a 4-inch gun, and it ran from 1896 until 1907 when the New Police Positive was introduced in 1907. Anytime you see the word positive in a Colt model name, that refers to the transfer bar type. It's not a transfer bar, but it's a hammer block inside the action. The ones that, like this gun that's not a positive model, does not have that hammer block. This one that does have the hammer block. And we'll do a take-apart video on this gun to show you what that hammer block looks like. It's the exact type of hammer block that existed in all the Colt swing-out guns through the Mark III line, or up to the Mark III action. So it'd be in the Pythons, the Old Troopers, the Detective Specials, any of that stuff would have that same positive lock on. That's how it was built and advertised, as a positive lock. So this is let's clear it. So on these old guns, all the Colts, the cylinder latch pulls backwards and the cylinder swings out to the left. So we're clear here. The serial number on these guns are found on the inside of the crane, or inside of the crane cutout on the frame and on the crane itself. And that's not true with Smith & Wesson. That's typically an assembly number on the pre-1957 guns. On some of the older versions of this gun, when they were first introduced, the serial number was on the butt. And you will find the serial number on the butt of other models of Colt Revolver as well, particularly the military-issued guns. So this is a double-action, single-action revolver swing-out cylinder with an ejector rod, 6-round cylinder in 32 Colt New Police or 32 Smith & Wesson. So we don't have a shoulder here at the barrel. It's just a barrel screwed into the frame. It's marked, and the marking is very, very faint on this model. It's marked Colt New Police and 32 here, and it's got a 3-line patent date on the top of the barrel here, and we have some still photos of that that we'll put up that you can see a lot clearer than you can on this gun. But one of the more interesting markings on the New Police is how they mark the rampant Colt on this left side. On this side plate here, you'd have a rampant Colt with the words Colt New Police encircling that insignia. So that I don't know that there is another marking like that on a Colt Revolver. I'd have to go back and look, but it's kind of unique to this model, and I think we have a better picture of that also. These earlier grips, these hard rubber grips with the Colt in an oval on the top, is correct for that time period. So what do these things bring? I mean, it's a Colt, right? So, and it's old, so it's got to be a ton of money. I wish that were the case, but not necessarily. And that's a mistake that a lot of beginning gun collectors or beginning gun enthusiasts make, and rightly, they think that, Colt is one of the premier brands to collect, and that's absolutely a true statement. And typically, the older the Colt is, the more collectible it is, and still a true statement. But on some of the guns, such as this one, it is really, really all about condition and all about markings. So it's the same 3 things we talk about, and we're going to go over this again on this gun here in just a second, but the originality, the scarcity, and the condition. So as far as scarcity, less than 50,000 of these guns are made. So they're a little scarcer than many of the other models of Colt. I mean, over 750,000 of these were made, so there's a big difference there. The originality, the grips haven't been changed, the barrel hasn't been cut, it hasn't been re-blued, and you can see the niter blue is still present. You can see the niter blue, the really bright peacock blue here on the sides of the trigger, and to a degree, the polished sides of the hammer. show a lot of tarnish. These were not rust blued. Neither of these models were rust blued. They were furnace blued at the factory, which was a true black finish, and the polishing of a Colt was impeccable, even on the, I guess, the non-premier models. So the polishing was absolutely pristine before they were finished. So it's real easy to tell just by looking at the markings. They haven't been washed out. The screw holes haven't been washed out. The screw heads haven't been ganked up with a bad screwdriver. So the originality is there, the scarcity is okay, but the condition, and unfortunately this is about typical of the condition that you'll find one of these old guys. In fact, the grips are a little bit better because they're not chipped out on the bottom, which is typical for these hard rubber grips. So mechanically, we're timing fairly aggressively, timing pretty well on this gun. So, if we time it slow in single action, it's a little late. If we cock it aggressively, the cylinder carries through on the timing. So, unlike a Smith & Wesson, the cylinder is completely opposite in the direction travel of the Smith & Wesson. The hand's on the other side of the gun. The hand's on the left side rather than the right side, so the cylinder turns clockwise on a Colt. And retiming or fitting a new hand into one of these is a little bit more difficult because there's two bearing surfaces to fit. There's the primary surface and then a secondary surface that provides you with the lockup. When we take the gun apart in a different video, we'll take this one apart and show you what we're talking about. So this gun, unfortunately, probably in the $200 range, maybe just a little bit more if you find the right buyer for it. Is about all the money on these guns. We see people asking a lot more simply banking on the Colt name, and they just don't bring it. They just don't, not in this condition. Now, that said, if we had high original blue, especially if we had some kind of police department, particularly that New York City Police Department marking on the back strap, we could add several $100s, and we can get into the $1,000, $2,000 range for boxed minty examples and or examples with any of those police markings on that. So that's the New Police from 1900. Let's set him off to the side and let's look at its later cousin. So these came about, in 1908, and they lasted through about 1978. So it's about a 70-year production run on the Police Positive Special. There was a ton of changes. And in fact, the last two issues of this Police Positive Special were really nothing like the first three issues at all. So it's arguable that after, say, 1977, or after about 1977, maybe even a little earlier, then the gun really wasn't this gun anymore. It should have been called something different. But in any event, over 750,000 of these guns were made. It's one of the longest production runs of any Colt revolver ever. This particular unit is 1920. And it's also a .32 caliber. It's chambered for a .32-20 or .32 Winchester centerfire, which was a round that was chambered in the Winchester 92 lever action rifle and the Winchester 73 lever action rifle, various other lever action rifles, some bolt guns, some bolt rifles. And at the time, having a companion handgun the same caliber as a rifle made a lot of sense, still does. People shooting 44 Magnum lever actions, 44 Magnum revolver, same concept, different era, I guess. And I remember, when I was just a kid, like 10, which was a long time ago, starting out learning about guns and getting into guns, some of the old timers that had been around a minute really enjoyed .32-20 caliber handguns. And their claim was that it hit harder than .38 Special. And I'm not sure that's 100% true. The 100 grain load that's typical for a 100 grain bullet weight that's typical for .32-20 revolver cartridge is actually less energy than 32 H&R Magnum, or is certainly not 327 Federal. So there are more powerful 32 caliber ammunition out there now, but back when this was introduced, if you wanted a powerful 32 caliber handgun, 3220 was the way to go. And in fact, about that, manufacturers loaded different loadings, and you'll see some of the old branding on Remington boxes or Winchester boxes that were HV, or it'll say rifle only, and they shouldn't be used in handguns. Those were for the Winchester 92 rifle. But anything commercially loaded today, especially if it's 100 grain bullet loads or full lead bullet loads, should be safe to fire in a otherwise safe revolver chamber for 3220. If there's any doubt about that, query the ammunition manufacturer, whether it's Remington or HSM or whoever loaded the ammunition, and ask them if it's safe to fire in your particular revolver. Now, Smith & Wesson also made revolvers in 3220 in the K-frame and the hand ejector series, along with the 38 Special. So the difference in the design of the gun, there are a couple of things. One, the cylinder window, this window here, is longer. The cylinder is about 1/4 inch longer than this gun to accommodate 3220 and 38 Special ammunition. So this gun was also chambered in 38 Special. It's chambered in 3220. It was chambered in the 32 Colts. It was chambered in 38 Smith & Wessons. And there were a few rarer chamberings as well. So let's clear this guy out. On this side, we still have a cylinder release that pulls to the back, but we're domed and checkered now. So we pull it back, and we're still 6 cartridges in the cylinder, same rotation pattern. But this is a police positive special, so it does have that two-piece lock in here, or hammer block, if you will, that prevents the hammer from being able to go forward and contact the primer of a cartridge. On this gun, that's accomplished by the rebounding hammer and the way the action is built. But if you hit the back of the hammer hard enough, conceivably you could fire the gun by contacting the primer. On this gun, you cannot. There's a piece of steel in between the hammer and the frame, unless the trigger is pulled all the way to the rear to clear that out of the way. So that's what that's about. Now, this is a 6-inch barrel gun in this Police Positive Special, and they made barrel lengths from 2 to 6 inches in incremental lengths, and there are some, like 1.5 was a special order. There were special order barrel lengths in this gun that add to the value of it. So this gun also, this originally is a C frame, and it became the D frame with some minor changes. They introduced a detective special based on this frame in 1926. They're serialized together for quite a while. So there are several issues, I don't mean problems, I mean actually submodels when I say issues in this particular context. But the first issue, or the first model of the Police Positive Special, ran from 1908 to 1927 to be this gun here. So we have the smooth top strap. This is just smooth here. We have the black grips, again with the Colt and the oval. And notice we have the typical chip out here, and that is really common to see. We see a lot of wear on the pad, the molded-in pattern of the grips and molded-in checkering, and this chip out of the back. We see that common. On a Smith & Wesson, there's a locator pin here, and you see them chip out on the bottom around that locator pin, but this one's chipped out of the back. So then you see some wood grips start to show up about 1923 through 1927. And then in 1928 through 46, they changed to a wooden grip gun. They serrated this top strap to reduce glare. And they put some texture on this trigger face. This is a smooth trigger face on this first issue. And they made this space here from the back of the trigger guard. They kind of swept this back a little bit further so that there would be more room for your hands between the rear of the trigger guard and the front of the back strap of the grip. So in 47, they changed it again. They went from the moon style, half moon style front sight to a ramp style front sight. There were some changes inside with a new cylinder retention system. They went to a groove trigger during that issue. And then in 77, when we made it from 77 to 78, it was a complete redesign. In fact, they changed the name. It had a shrouded ejector rod, half shroud on the ejector rod, similar to a Smith & Wesson looking revolver, and they dropped the special name, just called it the Police Positive. And then it went away for a while and then resurrected again for 1 year in 94, 95. It actually had the Mark V action. It was called Police Positive Mark V. But it's really a completely different gun, and I consider it its own model, not a part of the True Police Positive Special series. So the ammunition thing we talked about with 3220, just be cautious, but any currently manufactured 3220 should be safe for a revolver, but assuming the revolver is safe in and of itself. So, but double check with the manufacturer just to make sure. So let's evaluate this guy, because again, it's a Colt, and again, it's 104 years old, right? So it's got to be worth some money. Well, it's worth money, but it's not. I mean, you're not going to send your kid to college or trade it in on a car. So originality, scarcity, and condition. Originality, we're not reblued. We have the rampant horse visible here on the side. All the markings are clear, and it is marked 3220. The way, and the charts are out there with a little research as to how these markings, because these markings, how they were positioned on the gun changed over time, how the police over positive and then special off to the side. And then the markings on the top of the gun, how the dates changed and whatnot. That's all available on the internet, so you can tell if the gun's been rebarreled or not. Unlike Smith & Wesson, there's no serial number on the barrel itself. So if the barrel matches the markings are in the correct range for the serial number, then you can pretty much assume it's correct. So again, the serial number on this gun is on the crane cutout and the crane itself. There's not a serial number on the cylinder or on the butt of the gun. The serial number may be scratched on the inside of these grips. I haven't pulled them off to see. That's fairly common. That certainly could be. Scarcity, not scarce. Like I said, $250,000 or $750,000 were made. A little bit scarcer in 3220 than it is in 38 Special, but there are rarer calibers. We don't have any kind of police markings on this gun, which would be great. That would add value to it. And the condition, again, is about typical, maybe a little on the low side of typical for this gun. Again, we don't have doinked up screw slots. Our timing is okay. It's almost, yeah, it's still timing up. It's still timing up okay. The gun should be, I mean, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be safe to shoot. So it would be a shooter if someone was looking for a 3220. They enjoyed shooting the vintage revolvers and like the 3220 caliber and Colt. It would be a cool older piece to shoot if you wanted a shooter piece to add to a collection. So we still have some of the niter blue visible on the trigger. We're pretty much tarnished on the bright sides of the hammer. We have quite a bit of surface rust and minor pitting that's occurring generally overall throughout the gun. I looked at the bore in the shop, and the bore is surprisingly good. There are a couple of minor pits. Now, this is something you always have to think about with guns that originated around that turn of the 19th century. They were 19th to 20th century. Black powder was being phased out, smokeless powder was being phased in, but there was still a ton of black powder ammunition and a ton of corrosive and semi-corrosive primers out there. So look at bores and cylinders because they can be pitted. There's a couple of very minor pits in the barrel of this revolver. It probably won't affect its shootability very much at all. So I would grade this gun as a shooter. I wouldn't be hesitant to take it out and shoot it. It's probably not worth restoration. I think it's a $300 gun at retail is about where that gun's going to live. Might bring my brain, I mean, I've been surprised before when I say, oh, that's a $300 gun, and we throw it up on auction, and two people start going for it, and it ends up closing at $450 or $500. But that's rare, and you can't bank on that. And I've had guns that I say that's a $500 gun all day, $500 gun all day long, and it doesn't pull 300. So what the hell do I know? 40 years of doing this. But anyway, I wish they brought a ton more money. In great condition, in high original condition, boxes mean a lot. Boxes in the original paperwork can add several $100s to the value, regardless of the condition of the gun. If it has the original box and the paperwork, you can add at least $100, if not $200 more to the value of the gun. So bear that in mind. Don't hesitate from buying these guns as long as you're buying them correctly. Don't run out and spend $500 or $600 on something like this when you could take your time and find one in higher condition that's worth that $500 or $600. So anyway, it's a twofer, 2 Colts, and we've got a few more Colts we can bring out, a Cobra and things like that we got in that probably deserve their own little video. So if you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. We try to push as much stuff out as we can. Kind of hectic in the shop right now, so we're doing everything we can to get these videos out. So we appreciate every one of you. We appreciate your support so far, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.